Barnes, and I have my co-host here,
Nathan Taylor.
Nathan. Thanks for joining us. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Christina Green. She is the senior product manager, and she's part of the SMB engineering team at Microsoft. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be
Perfect.
here.
So, first things first, right? Could you just do us a favor and introduce yourself and let us know a little something about you and what you do over there at Microsoft World?
Yes. Okay. I at one point in my life, I was actually a teacher. So it's a far cry from that. I have mostly a background in startups, working in tech. And I came to Microsoft about 4 years ago. I've been working most of that whole time with the Microsoft 365 Lighthouse platform team. So we are really looking at how we can help MSPs to manage all of their customers that tend to be small and medium businesses. So it's been really fun to come in and kind of use my experience working myself in small companies, and apply that here at a huge company with lots of resources, and think about how we can build up that important backbone of our world economy, really. So yeah, that's in short. That's what I do.
Awesome.
Yeah, and as in that role, Christina, you and I have had the chance to interact quite a bit as, on partner advisory councils and just the Lighthouse team, is one of the more accessible parts of Microsoft. They really reach out to the community, and the
Mhm.
small business team, I think, is one of the teams at Microsoft that just loves connecting with partners. So it's been a blast to interact with you and everybody else. And um, Lighthouse, Microsoft 365 Lighthouse, which is very different from Azure Lighthouse. Um,
Yes.
is a free product, and for those who run in MSPs, if you're not looking at it, you need to go check it out. It's free to onboard, free to operate. It provides all kinds of data and sales leads opportunities, all kinds of really interesting reporting. You can pull in some really interesting security data, and really a valuable tool that you guys have published for free because you're trying to help us solve all these security and scalability problems we have in the small
Yes.
business space. So love that. Um, Always enjoyed those conversations with you. But today, I'd love to angle the conversation a little bit more into an area we're both very passionate about, and that is, this exciting world of Copilot and AI and Loop. And we've talked about Copilot regularly on the podcast because we play with it. Um, but one of my personal challenges with Copilot is my brain is not AI ready. I do not have a Copilot plus PC brain. My brain is very early 2000s Google focused. I know how to Google with the best of them. I don't AI well. Um, and that's a learning curve I really found fascinating to navigate of, like, I don't default to ChatGPT or Copilot. I default to the search bar. I
Yeah.
default to Google search. And I find myself going, what's wrong with you? You can do this quicker this other way. Um, and so I love talking to people who have drank the Kool-Aid and have converted their brains that are fully native in the AI world.
Nathan,
Yes.
And
that's nuts, man. I literally found myself on a Google browser yesterday, right? And I searched something, and I'm like, I don't want to search all these different sites for the answer. I reached right over to Copilot. I'm like, please give me the answer today. Right?
Like
And I'm
the
like,
answer.
thank God I did that.
Yeah.
I'm starting to drink the Kool Aid more and more because it's searching my search.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The Kool-Aid
yes,
tastes so good. I will I will say, speaking of the G word, I have to make the disclaimer that I'm not here like representing Microsoft. Clearly, I work there,
sure.
but it's been really fun because yeah. So for the past, I mean, over a year, and Nathan, you were part of our early access program for Copilot, which is super fun to just really get our hands dirty with that. But it is funny that you bring up search engines because that is like I always use that analogy, and not to age myself, but at one point in my life, I had to learn how to use a search engine. And it seems bonkers now, but like we
Right.
had to learn how to use
Yes.
email. We had to like learn all these things. And actually, when I was a teacher, so it was probably 15 years ago, I had to teach the kids how to use things like PowerPoint and Word. And that sounds really good. They didn't know how to use the trackpad. right? And these are like elementary school kids. I think elementary school kids now are a lot different. But the point is, there's always these skills that people need to, with a new technology, and we just forget that at one point search engines was a new technology. Like we had to learn what Boolean, search operators were. So I think that I always use that because with what I found for me using Copilot is it's that similar shift. And what's really cool about it is we talk at Microsoft a lot about growth mindset, which is this idea that like nobody is smart or not smart, but that we all have the capacity to learn. And I think this is such a great example of that. But it does take that investment, and it takes that curiosity, and it doesn't just come for free. So I think that's one area of like really interesting opportunity, but I think it is really difficult. Hey, how do we fit this in to like what we're doing now? Because we are so used to search engines and not the power of what this can do. It's like hard to wrap.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a quick learner on a lot of things. You throw me a new Microsoft technology, I can get up to speed quickly. Oh yeah, they're launching a new feature in 365. Okay, I'll go read a couple articles, and I'm able to fit that into the matrix I have, right? There's a skill set that I've developed over 20 years of I have a set of skills. I manage my email well, I manage my tasks well, I manage my knowledge well, and I am consistently confounded by the fact that my brain does not learn AI the same, because it is it's a paradigm shift, and I'm always like, almost like you're watching yourself going, man, why can you not get this? And that's interesting to me to experience that.
Nathan, I'm asking the same. Why can you not get it? Now, what drives me nuts is I had the Copilot app, because it was like showing the pre in the corner, and then we bought in like a year ago plus, and I love it, and truthfully, now I had all the apps on. I even showed my boss, right? I'm like, hey, here's the app so we can put it on a computer, and then it disappeared and it stopped working. So now I have to use the Microsoft 365 app. So now it's just trying to get to like, now it's a Microsoft, and then trying to get to allow through Intune. That's just I feel like they're changing my realm, and I don't like that. But for you, so.
Moving the cheese, we like to say, not on purpose. We try not to move the cheese.
No, it's a thing. And then, hearing about like Copilot agents. Hey, we're to use AI and automation to change your world. And I'm watching this presentation going, my brain is comprehending 20% of what you're selling. I can tell you see something, I don't see it. And I can smell it, but I cannot tell what it is. And so that's fun to learn and grow. So Christina, you are one of the people that when I interact with, I'm like, oh, you're a step ahead of me in this journey. And I have a few people I work with where I just can tell you've taken that time to retrain your brain and to accept the paradigm shift. And one of the places, you and I have interacted a little bit, you were showing me some of the things you're doing in like Loop. So Microsoft Loop is this Microsoft product. It's kind of like OneNote on the web with a bunch of really cool interactive collaborative features and AI. And it's another tool where I'm like, this can do so much more than I understand. But tell us about some of the things you're enjoying there, and kind of talk through some of that, because I want to grow in that area. I want to learn more.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll say too is what has happened over the past year-ish with Copilot is it's starting to aggregate a little bit more, in the sense that there's still sometimes you get different things from different ones depending where you're working and what you're doing. But I think the idea is to make that a stronger connection. And so I just wanted to give the disclaimer that like with Loop, it's not that the Copilot there actually does a whole lot different. But I love Loop so much because I use it for team agendas, and a lot of agenda sounds very basic, but a lot of like meeting notes or like collaboration. One of the things I love about it is like they have a really easy voting function. And so I'm really passionate about making sure every voice is heard. And, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later with the second topic we talked about, but, I will say as a woman in tech and working in small startups, I haven't always felt like I've had the same voice as other people. And so I like to think about that a lot for other people who might feel that way. I think early in career, also when I was early in career, I felt like that a lot. So being able to come into Loop and say, hey, let's write things down, let's vote on things, let's have, it's just like a great way to bring everyone to the table. So that's why I love Loop. Coming back to Copilot, the two main things I really use Copilot for. So Brandon, you were saying being able to find the information.
Right.
And like have it surface there. That's definitely valuable. Like I will sometimes use Copilot just to get to the reference documents so that I can like dig in deeper to a topic.
That's exactly like it mean, and I think that's what I was trying to go with, right? Is here I am asked by a client, what's the difference between Teams Premium and Copilot? Because they thought Copilot was included with Teams, and I'm like, okay, I know Microsoft changed this again. Thank you, Microsoft. More, licensing is a different language in itself.
Yes.
And so I was like, I started to Google it, and I'm like, man, nope. And I go over, and what does it do? It gives me the references to those things, so I can dig deeper. And I was able to show him right away. I was like, yes, okay, great.
Yes. Yes, and I've used that internally when I'm answering questions for external people. I'll use the web version to make sure that I'm finding external, like public links, and not just like the internal documents. So it's like helpful in that way as well. One of the other big things I like using Copilot for is a structure. So if I think of like, hey, I want to set forth a vision document to talk about what are the features we should put into Lighthouse to help our partners sell more Copilot licenses. And then, I need to go and talk to a bunch of team members to say, hey, this is why we should spend time on this and energy, and here's how we're going to do it. And so I'll go to Copilot and I'll say, help me structure these things. Help me think of metrics, like example metrics that I should put in there. And, it'll never get the metrics right, but it helps get those like creative juices flowing. And I'll say, okay, that's not exactly right, but I could go in here and like find these metrics and use that. And I'll say like the last thing that I love using Copilot for is critiquing what I have. And so that's been really fun, especially if you go in and you're like, pretend you're a VP of engineering who's very detail oriented and always wants to ask a bunch of questions to understand what's going on. Like, how could I improve this document for that person? And again, it's just like, who knows if it's actually right? I don't know that it would replace the feedback, but
for me, it's a lifesaver in writing SOPs. It's a lifesaver in writing contracts, right? Executive summaries are killer for me, but it's instead of Googling, hey, what is this?
Yeah.
Right? Go look up a company and then do this. I'm like, hey, go ahead and write an executive summary about this company engaging in this act, doing this.
Yeah.
And then like it writes it out for me. I'm like, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
yeah, exactly.
That's huge to me, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we're all about time, and if it can save me time, that's I'm more efficient to do the other things instead of stuck writing paperwork. So I love that.
Yes. And I think with the time thing too, the wordsmithing. I have such a math mind. Like I come from a physics background, and so I'm very like black and white. Like math is great. When it comes to like fluffy language, I'm like, it takes a lot of patience. And so
I'm a bullet point person, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Can you write this out in a paragraph? Because I don't want to.
Yes, exactly. And then, but also make it concise enough, right?
Yeah.
Like
and
that is smart in itself.
Yeah. Very serious.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's always helping me with like, I tend to use too many words and stuff. Maybe I'm the opposite side of you guys. I write kind of stream of conscious, and I'm like, well, I was going to follow up with this thing I wanted to talk to you about, the thing I was going to follow up about. And like, when I'm just like writing, I write things in this way that I go back. I'm like, well, I said like the same thing 3 different ways across those sentences. And then you go, Copilot fix this. And you're like, whoop. And you're like, oh, that's very polite and appropriate and much more concise than the words I used.
Also good when you're writing angry emails. Not to say that I've done that.
You're being a little aggressive. Maybe try this.
I'm like, I'm really upset right now that this happened. Can you please write this in a gentler way?
That is hilarious. But, and honestly, I know we all use this, but if you're someone out there that's not using Copilot and Teams, something's wrong. You're not. Yeah. You know how much time you can save on meeting notes, agendas, follow-ups, like just killer.
Yeah. And see, this is something I need to get deeper into. So like Nathan, you said some really nice things about me. I still have a lot to learn. Like, and honestly, I thought today about an agent, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I should have written it down, but like I need to go play with that more and understand it more. I think where I am really like spend a lot of my thought process time is like about this change management. So how, without like having someone go and spend a ton of time to play around with it, how can we bridge that gap to say like, I don't even think it's a prompt, right? Like I think it's a scenario that we can say, Copilot, most of the time will, shave a few minutes off of this, and that's a good place to start. I think it's an interesting question. And especially for small and medium businesses, right? It's like they don't have people just sitting around waiting to play around with Copilot. So
Yeah, we're trying to build out internally a Copilot readiness play, and you got to hear some of our challenges there. Of like, it touches on a lot of things, but to speak on your topic, this whole enablement thing is a real thing of, you've got to select a few pilot users in a small business who will use it. And the instinct is to say, let's give it to the CEO and the IT guy.
Yeah.
And let me tell you the two people who are not going to use it in most companies. It's the CEO and the IT guy. The CEO guy is too busy and he lives off his text messages. He doesn't write emails. He writes very quick emails. He doesn't have enough time to learn something new. He's going.
Yeah.
And your IT guy is in RMM and admin portals, and he's also not an information worker that can benefit from it. And so you got to pick the right people. It's probably your marketing person, a project manager, and a front desk person. Those people also.
An assistant would be good too.
What'd you say?
An assistant.
Oh,
like
yes.
Executive assistant.
Yes.
Another one, honestly, developers. So I'd say IT guy, but our developers check their code against it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you find these. You got to learn who uses it.
Yeah.
And then you got to get them into it and then let them evangelize. But then, like you said, Christina, I think you got to lead with the hero SKUs. Hey, let me show you what it does in a meeting recap. Wow. Okay. My life has changed. Great. Well, a week later, you got to go, let me show you how you can convert a 50-page Word doc into a 15-page PowerPoint with one click. Whoa, my mind just exploded, right? And then
yeah, what I'll say is like I actually think it's a little bit different in that it needs to be hey, here is how you have better meetings, right? And so you have Copilot. Like one thing that we're working on in our team, full disclosure, is like having better agendas and action, like outcomes, right? Goals.
Why are we here?
Yes, exactly. And then it's really easy. We have a lot of passionate people, so we tend to go off topic, but it's not off topic because we don't have a topic, right?
Right.
So I think like having those, and that's why I'm like, I don't know if it's a scenario or what to call it, but to be able to say, okay, so first what you do is create an agenda, ask Copilot to help with the structure, suggest 3 things to, that are goals, and then take that, send it out, right? And then have Copilot record the meeting, or record the meeting so you can Copilot it. During the meeting, do XYZ. After the meeting, have it write the follow-up notes. Put those follow-up notes, if you're using Loop, to come back to Loop, there's a task list which connects to To-Do and Planner. And so, right, tie these things all together and then schedule a Copilot prompt to every day. Tell people, did you do your stuff yet? Or, you can like
send us the formula for that real quick.
I kind of made that up as I went along. I should probably formalize that, but that's where I think we see a lot of here's how you can do it in Word. Here's like the one prompt I like, but to be able to say, okay, over the course of a week, you do all these different things, and here's how you can, line it up. And then going back to your comment, Nathan, about the CEO and the IT guy, I was going to make a snarky comment of like, maybe we should have more women CEOs. But I actually, when I started thinking about it, it was really interesting because they did a study, the Work Trend Index that Microsoft published. And one of the things they found was that managers were much more likely to find value out of Copilot. And one of the reasons is they're much better at delegating tasks. And when you talking about that mind shift with Copilot, I remember the first few times I used it in Teams, and I was like, I feel like a jerk because I'm like telling Copilot make 5 bullet points, make sure that it's, like you don't use a condescending tone.
Okay, so I find myself doing this too, where I ask it please.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want.
Yeah, right.
Yes, this is amazing.
I'm
so
pretty,
true.
I'm a very direct person, but just out of kindness, I'm like, please do this.
Yes, or, exactly.
It's not even live, but I'm still gonna.
Yeah. No, and it's so interesting because that's where I kind of started thinking about this shift, like we had to do with Boolean search terms, which is like we have to think about talking to Copilot. Copilot doesn't know anything on its own, right? It just is a machine that gathers information, and so we have to be really explicit. And if you talk to somebody like that, it's like really rude. If you send them a huge wall of text with like instructions, right? But Copilot, like you have to break out of that mindset.
Yes.
And I feel like I've been trained for so long to like be quick, concise.
Oh yes.
So
no question.
So have you guys seen this phenomenon? I'm starting to see where I'm dealing with more of even my vendors who have the keys, and basically I almost feel like they're selling or offering as an offering that they can give you Copilot scripts to write stuff for you, like in this language. So like they're starting to benefit off of the AI of like, here's what you need to put in the prompt in this language, do this, and I'm like, that's nuts. But I mean, have you guys seen that at all?
I haven't seen that.
I've seen some interesting cheat sheets where people are like, here's how you get the most out of it. And it's a lot of that, like write this prompt, remember, or like people have trainings, they're like prompt 1, prompt 2, prompt 3, prompt 4. Now look what happens, and like people, you said,
people are gonna start selling them on Etsy.
Well, I think
and you can buy the embroidery too.
That's that. I think it's interesting because Christina, you're absolutely right. One of my superpowers as an engineer in the 2000s and the teens is my ability to search Google. I wasn't that much smarter than the guy next to me, but I was better at searching Google.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? That means I was really good at crafting a very concise Boolean search. Tell me this. Oh, nope, I rephrase it. Okay, I need this time frame. Like that is a skill that I crafted for 20 years.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And it is a disservice in a Copilot world because Copilot says, you got to give me more data. Like you got to just ask me like I'm 5. Ask me the question like I'm a 5-year-old and I'll give you better results. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay.
And asterisk.
Yes.
Did I put the parentheses in the right place? I don't think it's a disservice. I think it's just like again, we take that for granted now, like how hard it was. Another thing that I talk about a lot is, again, when I was teaching, I had to, and again, it was a while ago, but talking about how to find things online that are legit. Like that is a skill. And I don't know if like kids these days know how to do that right away. Right. And we're trying to teach them, here's how to leverage AI and not like cheat. But I think like that's a very similar skill. Like now I feel like I call BS on a lot of stuff online. But I have that intuition of like, oh, if I want to see if something's right, how do I go figure that out? And I think this is like another one of those, you just got to use it. It's like a muscle. You got to use it. You get better and better.
Yeah. I was laughing because I was talking to another guy and he's like, I use a ton of AI. And he was talking about how he's developed a method where he has AI generate content for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he fact checks it with another AI and then takes the results from there and runs it through another AI. Because he said, what I learned was that the hallucinations would get caught by the next AI. And I was like, oh man, like we've got such a paradigm shift, because you're absolutely right. Like there's also these other macro paradigm shifts of like, I used to be able to tell what was a phishing email instantly, what was a link in Google that was fake. Now Google aggregates all the answers and I can't tell what data it's pulling that's fake. I don't have that barometer. And so I've lost some of my context. And so it's a new set of skills to learn to navigate that data. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, let me. Oh, go ahead, Brandon. Finish your thought.
Absolutely. Nathan, honestly, if you have something to finish, I was going to move on to the next topic.
Perfect. Then do that. That was where I was going to.
All right. Christina, as a wonderful female in the tech world, I can personally say that I love having women on staff. I wish there was more.
Yeah.
Honest to God, working with a lot of dudes all the time, it can be boring.
Agreed.
But I was in the military, I was in the army, I was in the infantry, right? There was no females, so working with guys for 8 years straight, there's not as much drama, but we handled things differently.
I don't know.
Let's put
I've
it that
seen,
way.
what is it, 30 for 30? Like, guys have
Yeah.
plenty of drama. Don't tell me that. Or what was that? Hard Knocks. That's the one. I remember watching that and I was like, what?
It's different drama, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we would slam tables over like a game of Monopoly, and just beat each other up. That's really.
Oh, so you'd get really emotional.
Yeah, the difference is we'd wrestle or like fight it out, and then we're done.
Yeah.
That's all. But not in IT world, just FYI. I love having. I love having females on staff. I have a few right now, and I do promote that. So tell us more about you and your passion about that.
Yeah, so it's I'm gonna throw back to my teaching days. I grew up in Southern California. When I was a teacher, I taught at a middle school in Berkeley, California, which was on the border basically with Oakland. So it was a very, urban school district, as they say. And I was working with a lot of kids that looked a lot different than me. The demographics were much different than what I had grown up with. And I look back on that time, man, I did so much, right? Like I probably, like a lot of the US and maybe other parts in the world, I learned a lot with the things that happened in 2020, George Floyd, like all that stuff. And I've been working now, I have 2 kids. Like I want them to be nice to everyone, right? And so I think about this a lot in that context because, now I'm in tech and I'm in this world where, the people that I report to don't look like me. A lot of the people, that I work with don't look like me. And these things, I think the biggest, like the hardest thing for me is these things that I was told growing up is not the thing that helps me be successful here. So like, don't make a scene. Nobody wants you to like brag about yourself, stuff like that. And now in the tech world, it's like, and you have to own your accomplishments. It's really hard for me to do. So this is why I'm so passionate, having the experience as a woman in tech. Now I try to take that and flip it around and think about how I can be an ally for other people as well. But clearly experiencing it every day, I do think a lot about being a woman in tech. And I think that, one thing that I look for, especially when I'm looking for a new role, I think a lot about, am I going to go to a team that is going to accept me for who I am and appreciate the skills that I have and not assume that I'm one way or the other because of, what I look like. And so I think with that, it's a lot of vulnerability, I would say, is I think what it comes down to. So we were talking earlier, I don't think there's a magic answer for how to make everything more diverse, like whether it's women or people of color or anything else. But I think that, that's one reason I appreciate you all talking to me about this here is I think that vulnerability really is like, that's how we're going to get the answer, right, as a society. And that is something that I have seen change, in the 15 years I've been in tech.
So, I mean, I'm just going to say this, like I have 3 daughters, okay? 3. And my last one's a senior in high school and I've survived that world. But none of them have been interested in the technology, right?
Yeah.
Even my niece or like people, I think I have a hard time of just finding like, I was like, I could teach you, right? So I think I find sometimes that I wish people were more interested in problem solving. And when I do find someone like that, it's pretty awesome. My current, one of the girls right now, she's like, I think it's always funny. They always want to do cybersecurity. And I go, tell me what cybersecurity is first, and I'll let you try it out. But I find that problem of just trying to find more interest, honestly, on my side.
Yeah.
I wish there was.
Yeah.
Well, and you wonder where, like all the macro and micro things that contribute to that, right? Like oftentimes the women are in tech, they end up in specific roles, and now is that how much of that is skills, or like a lot of women have a little bit more EQ. So all of a sudden they're in a management or a project management or a leadership role quickly because it's like, yeah, that knucklehead over there is brilliant, but he can't read a room, right? So, but I'm with you. I've always liked working with the women we've had in our team, some brilliant women, and um, anecdotally, going to the Microsoft campus is always fascinating to me because it is one of the most diverse places I have ever been in from a tech perspective. You guys from your team went to some of our local MSP events, and you're like, that MSP event was a bunch of 50-year-old white guys in gray polos. And you're like, absolutely, that is everybody in that room. And some of that is those guys all invented this industry, right? They were all the IT guys in the 90s. And for whatever dynamics, those are now the guys who are here. And frankly, our industry is gonna be transformed. All those guys are retiring, and it's a moment when the industry can look different. But going to the Microsoft campus, I'm always amazed at how diverse it is. The leaders, a lot of them are women, and managing departments and teams, it's female leaders, and a lot of different ethnicities and stuff. And it's really fascinating to me and kind of really neat to see. And I hope we can continue to see that across other companies as that grows.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because we are in a tough situation in that, like Brandon, what you were saying about your kids. Yeah, like when I was getting my physics degree, people would not believe me that I was studying physics.
Right.
I would get, you're studying physics, but you're a girl, right? Or like
that matters.
Yeah, right. I used to tell people as a joke that because they'd be like, why are you getting a physics degree? And I'm like, oh, to find a husband. And people thought I was serious.
Oh no.
I'm like, there has
no.
Your sarcasm already just wins.
We had a saying which was the odds are good, but the goods are odd. Anyways, so no shade to my ex-boyfriend from college, but anyways. So I think but and even now, there's things that I, present employer aside, even in my last employer, I was visibly pregnant during the time that I was there. And I had some really just terrible conversations. I had one guy who did not have kids and was not a woman tell me that I would not be able to return to work after having a kid. And that was when I was meeting with him to tell him about, I was about to leave for maternity leave and talking about my return to work plan. So just very condescending and so I think so Brandon, to your point, I think it is really interesting because there's this whole thing about visibility and it's I don't know specifically about your kids, but thinking through, is it that they're not interested in the subject matter, or is it that's going to be an uphill battle, and maybe they can do it subconsciously or something?
I don't know. I mean, it's so weird, right? I mean, I've been on IT for since they can remember.
Mm-hmm.
They don't remember in the middle. Well, my daughter might remember in the military a little bit, but I don't know. It's just it's just the natural things of I never forced anything really down their throats. I'm just be active, right? And whatever they want to be active in. So if one daughter wants to do pottery, then do pottery, right? But it's just not something I can't say that I grew up going, oh my God, I'm going to be a computer nerd.
Right.
Like I said, I was in the infantry for 8 years. I was in a whole different role. I literally heard something coming down the highway that says use your security clearance to do IT. And I'm like, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah.
And then I found a passion. So I think I've tried to open it up to them. And I don't think they realize that people would hire them over, they want to diversify the office a bit. They want to have more than just a bunch of, nerdy old dudes. Right. And so I just want to make sure that I open that door for them, or at least show them they have the opportunity when they can realize that, problem solving is pretty cool.
And I think I love the way that you frame it as problem solving, because that was what I was going to get into next is I think that, and Nathan, you kind of hit on this when you were talking about the EQ, right? And, my snarky response a little bit is our society has told some people to have better EQ than others and shamed, this group. But it's, and I've worked in startups. I've had to do the job hunt a ton of times. And I just, look at this and I'm like, this is a very interesting way to take it, because there are a lot of things that you need to be really good at in a product management role.
Yeah.
And it's not always being the loudest in the room.
Right.
You need to have influence, but you don't have to be the loudest. Like there's all these nuances. And I think that it can be hard
Yes.
in some of these like predefined roles to think
Yeah.
about that. And the problem solving piece, I mean, yeah, there's a lot. So I also had a specialization in bilingual education. And I think about this a lot because learning a language, like a spoken language, is that's a lot of problem solving. That's a lot of logic. And so
Yes.
some people who might be good, and if you, my kids are both bilingual because it helps them with math. It helps them with hopefully computer science one day, you know, like all these things. And so, you know, I think that if we can be more open-minded as to what makes someone successful in these roles, and then, you know, most of the time it's a team. And so everybody doesn't have to be exactly alike.
Yes.
There's different skills we can bring in and learn from each other and all get better together. I think it'll help a lot.
Nathan, you said EQ. How many of our really smart techs would even know what that is?
Right. Right.
Not those guys.
But
Not those
I
guys. Try not to.
I even yeah, sorry, you're right. Emotional quotient. It's like this ability to read a room and understand people. But I love your comment, you know, Christina, of even that. Like there's a prejudice there of like women are better at EQ. Now, I think I can tell you that my daughter, who's 3, has a higher EQ than my 7-11-year-old boys. It's just there is some level of, you know, we have differences in the way we approach the world, but it doesn't have to be a flat rule, right? And like you said, even that, like I have these preconceived expectations, and you have to kind of navigate those and realize how even I know that I have those ways. I've got to be careful about my thinking. And I think there's also some really big cultural things. I've talked to a couple of people who said that, you know, a lot of kids show a lot of interest in technology. And I have a 6th grader, and there's something that happens between 6th and 8th grade. And in 6th grade, they're all kids and they can be interested in whatever they want, and they're all great with each other and they love each other. And then one day you wake up and you realize your kid lives in a different world, and everybody is being forced to pick a lane. And there is a lot of pressure. I've heard from a lot of people that a lot of the smart girls feel like I can go be one of the smart girls, but that dictates all these things in my social order. Right. And like even now we still have this like, you know, like, well, it's socially acceptable to be a volleyball player and to be in band, but it's not socially acceptable to be in the chess club, because this chess club is a bunch of pocket protector people, right? Like whatever the layers are, and I don't have the answers to it, but I think it is, you know, it's a complex issue, and you know, I hope we can help just in our roles to just, you know, as you said, Brandon, we always at Machine Logic when we were doing hiring, and if we could get a female to apply, we loved it because they just brought a different perspective and a different way of approaching, and customers really appreciated that. And really smart, you know, some of our best employees were females. So
shout out to Alice Hart, because she was my favorite, and she left me a long time ago. She was like literally like my equivalent, and she taught me some stuff, and I miss her for in like okay.
one of my favorite coworkers just is moving on to a new role, Andy, and she's the best project manager I've ever worked with. Just incredible. And you're right, I mean there's just incredible people.
Honestly,
and
where Alice sorry, I know we got to wrap up here pretty soon, and I got to go to a football game across the way for my son, but one of the best things is, like, you know, you have these female engineers out there, and I think what she didn't no one realized is she got even better jobs faster because people like really like that position. And when you have that emotional intelligence, you have those things. That's huge. So I'm an advocate. I'm all for it. So sorry, I'm not trying to steal your platform.
No. I think like my TLDR would be, you know, I think again, some of these things we talked about like being more open to what is exactly required versus not. I think instead of just fitting in that pigeonhole. And then one thing that I try to do, what do they call it? Like micro, whatever. One thing that I try to do is really think gender neutral. And so I didn't want to call you out on it earlier, Nathan, but like, you know, with CEO, I try to like be very, and I try to say IT admin instead of IT guy. And then even when talking, I don't know if you noticed, but I try to say kids. Like I have 2 girls. But I am like, I don't want people to see them as girls. I want people to see them as kids, right? They're
right.
not better behaved because they're girl. Like, I wish. But I want them to also feel like they're open to science and trucks and
Right.
being dirty and dinosaurs, you know.
Sure.
So I think those are kind of the things that I can leave you with. And then let me know when you solve this problem. We'll share it.
Man, just throwing down the gauntlet right at the end of the episode here. Thanks, Christina.
I do it again.
We'll have you guys back for the next battle. It'd be good. Christina, how can people get a hold of you, or like how can we put your name out there to for people to contact more about your information for SAE?
Yeah, I would say just probably LinkedIn is the best. So I'm Christina S. Green, S as in Sam. On LinkedIn, I'm connected to Nathan, so
I will definitely. I can put your information out there.
Oh yeah.
Put it on our stuff. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And, I like having changed up here a little bit. So maybe we can have you on again if you'd like that.
I would love to come again. I also can always recommend some like really amazing people who happen to be women. If you're looking to, increase the scope.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I love it.
We got anything else on this wonderful Friday?
No, I appreciate it, Christina, and go use Copilot. Go figure it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Copilot now. How do we solve this?
Right. Do that. It'll fix it.
All right. And if people hit me up on LinkedIn, I want to hear how they're using Copilot. Like, I love nerding in on this stuff.
No,
awesome.
All right. Thank
Great
you.
stuff.
To all of our listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the nice things. Make comments and let us know how you feel about the episode. And we appreciate it. And thanks for coming on, Christina. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, team.
Good job.
Right? It's right there. I use guys a lot, and I'm always like, there's